An absolutely shocking turn of events, as after his movements in the Nest of Turbidity, where he personally destroyed multiple Terracosm stage entities, here he currently stood with an existential Paracosm omniversal seed obtained by decimating a weak Paracosm stage entity with plotting and fake outs. All of it was due to the weavings of the ascendant existential extremity clone of the protagonist. All of it was due to the unearthing of the records of Lumen and subsequent nonsensical tools under the weavings of the protagonist. The advent of the resurgence of the existential omniversal lineage of Lumen. Enough records of Lumen have been uncovered, and the revival of multiple commanders of the battalions of Lumen have given access to the intricate workings of this lineage. The intricacies of Lumen can now begin to be integrated into the existential omniversal emperor lineage of the protagonist. The pathway to the distinction of the existential omniversal Lumen emperor lineage has opened. Existential omniversal Lumen emperor. The possibility and pathway of such a lineage unfolded before Noah's eyes, as before any other prompts showcasing its advent could arise. Space distorted as before Noah's figure. The visage of a young man who seemed to be in his teens appeared. Yet his eyes dripped with age and somberness, as he was currently adorned in a golden armament, his hand thrusting forward a plasmic golden sword of light, as behind him trillions of other figures just like him holding similar swords appeared as they all thrust out towards Noah. It was the visage of a certain doppelganger, a doppelganger of one of the 81 pillars of the Imperium, an exarch that had been carefully watching this battlefield. The moment the reality of who the master of the newly appearing entities of Lumen was ascertained, this exarch of the Imperium had to move and take a chance to eradicate him. So the moment that bubbles began bouncing on Noah's head and he received looks of disbelief from the Sanctus Populi, the Imperium legions also received affirmation as they moved. The exarch was merely the fastest. He didn't say anything as he struck speedily. He didn't ask how, nor wonder why this existence was able to do what he did. He only knew that any source of Lumen had to be eradicated, otherwise an irreversible future would unfold. The unstoppable force of a Paracosm stage exarch of the Imperium bore down on Noah as gloriously the figures of the Elder Queen Mother of Dignity and Sona appeared in front of him. Sona swung out with two icy gold blades while the Elder Queen Mother of Dignity bellowed out to release a halcyon-colored paracosm. They moved to defend without so much as a thought as Noah's eyes became increasingly cold. Above him, the playful eyes of Bubbles became cold and full of anger as its mouth instantly opened as if it would swallow all the trillions of incoming swords. And at such a time, Noah's voice echoed out, "Now you can let loose." Permission was granted, and the moment such permission was given, "Oh!" The bellow of the first ascendant existential summon, Piety, rang out with immeasurable fervor. Chapter 3112, The Resurgence of Lumen, 3rd. It was a rapid change in development. Within the recently declared Salvus domain where no conflict could take place, legions of powerful omniversal pillagers had appeared as both the Sanctus Populi and legions of the Imperium began to work together on a shaky alliance. But during such a battle to defend themselves, the brilliance of something long erased and forgotten across the eons of history reappeared. They showed great battle power, as through a plot, they were able to break down an unbreakable wall of Paracosm as an entity of such caliber fell. But their appearance truly changed too many things, as with their existence, the Imperium truly couldn't sit still. So the doppelganger of an Imperium exarch moved. Trillions of figures of himself coldly thrusting a golden blade towards the figure of the one determined to be the master. Sona and the Elder Queen Mother of Dignity moved to oppose this being first. But the brilliant light of piety that was let loose appeared behind Noah at a ridiculously fast speed, its spear already trusting out in turn as behind Noah. The glorious scene of trillions of white gold spears manifesting like drops of rain bloomed to oppose the doppelganger of the Imperium exarch. Piety's very existence felt an abhorrent amount of emotions and hatred, as within the body of this doppelganger, it could feel a trace of the lineage that had done inexcusable things all those years ago. The lineage that had betrayed the brilliance of Lumen to take power themselves. The very existence of piety sought retribution for its actions. The doppelganger of the Imperium Exarch felt the appearance of piety in the rows of attacks coming as its eyes remained on Noah. He had been watching and planning this whole time, as when he moved, he would not fail. So he spoke lightly. From his brows, a medallion split open his skin and floated out. It radiated such a profound authority that the moment it appeared, everything seemed to freeze and slow down. This medallion came to float above the doppelganger as it began to spin, releasing an instantaneous glow of brilliance that caused the trillions of incoming spears of piety to be reflected and turned, with them all rushing towards piety an instant later. Wah! Piety's devastating attack was actually reflected. But this wasn't all. Yelena. The doppelganger called out again as with a hard expression that didn't wish to show any emotions. The visage of Martial Empress Yelena appeared in front of Sona and the Elder Queen Mother of Dignity. Her eyes and Sona's eyes locked onto each other as both of these beings recognized the other. They had both seen weavings of each other in the possible futures that were coming before all the recent changes occurred. In the immeasurably short span of a fraction of an instant, their eyes flashed as they exchanged their intents. You know this isn't the proper path to follow. Sona's silent intent only flashed before Yelena replied. I know, but I am bound with no other choices. There are always choices. You are making one right now. Sona could see the unwillingness and sense of duty within Martial Empress Yelena, but she also had her own duty. After their brief exchange of intents, she struck out with her icy blades while above her. The influence of a greater omniversal authority flowed down freely. But Martia Empress Yelena stood to oppose and take the attention of both Sona and the Elder Queen Mother of Dignity, as the pathway from the doppelganger of the Imperium Exarch and Noah was cleared. In the body of a teenager, this ancient entity only had one idealized reality he wanted to achieve in his paracosm: death of this being before him. His existence pierced over and over again by the trillions of swords converging all around towards him. This was the paracosm this exarch wanted to achieve. Sadly for him, the one he wanted to kill was not alone. Apart from Bubbles opening its endless maw to devour the incoming sword. The figures of Tiamatherian and Nagarius flashed behind Noah as a brilliant white-gold light bloomed from each of them. And below the Imperium Exarch, the visage of Fenrir that was akin to a mere flicker of light appeared, its jaws widespread and shooting out to swallow the enemy above it. It was a reality full of opposing paracosms and ideals, all faced against the brilliant light of Lumen that did not depend on any omniversal authorities. And when it all came together, BOOM! The impact of countless things echoed out. An immeasurably heavy clash that caused a singularity of multicolored light to bloom as from it, multiple figures shot out in different directions due to the heavy impact. Dum! Dum! The heavy beat of drums resounded across the battlefield as on one side, the figures of the doppelganger and Martial Empress Yelena could be seen after an explosion of light, the armor on Yelena fighting back frost, while the doppelganger of the Imperium Exarch had a large tear across the chest, with his expression being immeasurably apathetic. On the other side, the figures of Sona, the Elder Queen Mother of Dignity, and Piety were lined up by Nagarius, Tiamatherian, Fenrir, and Bubbles radiated a profound brilliance as not a single sign of injury could be seen, even though they were displaced. Only the figure of the Weaver of Existence remained right where it was, floating calmly as not even a glimmer of hair on his head had any impact. The rageful roar of the existential devouring turtle could be heard far above them amidst this astounding scene that moments later began to change yet again. It was due to the many bright flashes of brilliance that began to appear beside and behind the doppelganger of the Imperium Exarch and Martial Empress Yelena.
Shah!
One by one, the brilliant multicolored light of paracosm bloomed as with varying shapes and sizes, the reinforcements of the Imperium finally arrived. Chapter 3113, The Resurgence of Lumen. Exarch Malagaro, a booming intent addressed the visage of the doppelganger of the Imperium Exarch that had just made a move against Noah. It was a woman clad in a white garment that hugged her body closely, a golden empress robe covering the rest of her body as she was another Exarch of the Imperium. Exarch Malagaro nodded grimly as he voiced out. Exarch Alina, there was no exaggeration in my words, nor any falsehood. What you all see is the worst possible scenario. What they all saw, multiple of them, as Exarch Malagaro wasn't purely addressing Exarch Alina. Around them, the doppelgangers or real dominiums of other exarchs had appeared for a total of 13 terrifying paracosm stage entities, in addition to Exarch Malagaro. Exarch Alina and the others stared at the brilliance of white gold light in the distance as small Imperium legions filled with terrifying auras of terracosm. Stage Imperium knights flourished behind them. Her intent was a cautious one as she replied, "More than half of all exarchs have received your weavings and passed on the word to the Imperium Autarch. Our current mission is containment and intelligence gathering. Are they appearing just here? Is this a branch? Are they in other locations? Is it actually them involved in the cessation of weavings? The Imperium Autarch, the one that all the exarchs of the Imperium answered to, the man who changed eons of causality, the one who countless weavings of existence flowed to within this vast omniverse. Such a being was already briefed on what was occurring here, as it was truly something to understand and take care of with utmost scrutiny. Even the daring question of whether they were actually the cause of a fragile alliance taking place was put forth. The existential omniversal lineage of Lumen was so terrifying that their reappearance may as well be connected as to why they all experienced the cessation of weavings. Exarch Malagaro's doppelganger gazed towards Noah calmly as he voiced out, "I don't have the assurance to answer all those questions, but the resurgence of Lumen seems to be separate from the entities identified as worms. The eyes of many of the newly appearing exarchs shone, so two potentially cataclysmic causing events, each with their own source. I saw we focus on the ones we can currently see and understand. Within the span of an instant, and as their legions materialized behind them, some of the exarchs of the Imperium discussed amongst each other as a plan of action quickly formed. Each of them pulsed with a tremendous level of power at the paracosm stage, especially those here with their main dominions. Those of the Sanctus Populi seem to be circling around the master of the current peons of Lumen here. What of the proposed alliance?" A critical question was asked in the midst of all this. Does that question even need to be asked? An utterly regal and cold voice of a woman with white hair and gold eyes adorned in a white armament echoed out and continued. "Anything associated with Lumen has to go. From henceforth, the Sanctus Populi can be deemed to have been harboring a reserve of the wreckage of Lumen. The plans to associate with them in a worthless alliance and use them as fodder in the front lines to understand what is causing the cessation of weavings are now mute. They are part of this cessation that needs to be eradicated. Double A, an inviolable voice, one that after a brief silence. Exarch Chavron is right. Other voices buzzed in with affirmation. Some chose not to speak, but it seemed like the choice was clear. As these terrifying beings had their discussions, the side they were staring at also gathered together defensively as the ascendant existential summons of Lumen surrounded Noah, their eyes ferociously gazing forward, as close by, multiple Elder Queen Mothers of the Sanctus Populi began to arrive. They were briefed by the information that the Elder Queen Mother of Dignity and Life had passed back, as at this moment. They knew that apart from the enemy omniversal pillagers above, an Imperium Exarch had attacked someone belonging to their domain, as the Elder Queen Mother of Dignity and Sona had even defended him. Someone who was currently surrounded by the weavings of Lumen. Surrounded by a verdant glow of vitality, the Elder Queen Mother of Life gazed with hesitation at the terrifying force emanating from the 13 paracosm stage exarchs in the distance. How is this to be navigated? Conflict with the Imperium, when we face the cessation of all weavings, will only result in a greater loss of life. Her words had barely begun before Sona's figure blared with radiance as she scoffed and floated closer toward Noah, her eyes pulsing with anger as they kept track of Martial Empress Yelena far away. That old granny should have made a decision by now, but regardless of what you all do, I will be attacking those wishing harm on those I care about. So should you all, since the man in question already has the distinction of a Sanctus Prince, making him one of your own. Her words were sharp as they caused ire from the newly arriving Paracosm stage Elder Queen Mothers, their numbers only amounting to 6, including Mother of Dignity and Life. They were greatly outnumbered. careful of how speak of the Sanctus Empress. One of the newly arriving Elder Queen mothers had begun to admonish Sona when her words stopped, light illuminating in her eyes and the eyes of all other Elder Queen mothers as their gazes quickly changed. They looked towards Sona as if she were a freak, as the Mother of Dignity gazed towards Noah while sighing out. The Sanctus Empress says to protect Sanctus Prince Osmond at all costs. Die before him if you have to. She would also like to meet him in the source of populace. The words were astonishing ones, as the Elder Queen Mother had spoken them for Noah to hear as well, his gaze briefly shifting over to them as he had his own weavings to currently worry about. First, a look at where he currently was, what had already occurred, and how things were about to unfold. The protagonist had gotten his hands on an existential paracosmic omniversal symbol, something he was seeking that was a mere impossibility seconds ago, before he expanded 3 seconds to 3 days and underwent extensive cultivation. Now, he held such a seed in his hands as its purpose was for the rebirth of something that only he held the records of. When it came to how he could best elevate his power and push the weavings of the protagonist to unleash even more overpowered weavings of reality, this was a tool he had to utilize. So he spoke to his weavings as he connected to the quintessential codex of extremity. Let us have Diorkness come to light once more. Chapter 31:14. The Existential Omniversal Lumen Emperor 1. He wanted to bring a greater omniversal authority born solely under his banner back to light. He wanted to bring darkness back to light and begin the process of elevation towards the distinction of the existential omniversal Lumen Emperor. Elevated distinctions only granted him more power. The Weaver of Existence and Weaver of Extremity showed this very closely, as Noah understood when other aspects of his existence were taken higher, everything about him advanced. The ascendant existential extremity clone of the protagonist wishes to unearth even more records of a lost lineage. Within the records you have already retrieved, the potent workings of Lumen have begun to flow freely once more. Within the body of the last guardian of Lumen, there lies recently generated source blood of Lumen that can be extracted and branded to your own lineage. Within the bodies of the other ascendant existential summons, too little time has passed for enough source blood of Lumen to be generated. The answer was piety, and as if it could hear the weavings of its master, the massive winged body blazing with white gold brilliance came behind Noah and bowed as if it had already felt what he wanted to do. It would my honor, master, the last guardian of Lumen. It knew very well how things had ended, as its return here was a possibility to correct many wrongs, but none of it would be possible if not for the man ahead of it. Under his weavings, even more records of Lumen were unearthed, as when he looked at Negarius, Tiamatherian, Fenrir, and Bubbles, he could see the scattered weavings of old commanders within their eyes. It meant that many things would be possible in the future. And if the Master himself wanted the source blood of Lumen its existence had just produced, did it not mean the lineage could truly be brought back once more? To live again after eons of erasure? Crack! With emotional weavings coursing through piety, the chest of this guardian split open as a spinning white gold singularity shot out into the body of Noah instantly, his wings flapping behind him as they centralized the booming brilliance and took everything into his body. Piety was emotional at such a scene, as it could already see it. It could see the brilliance of Lumen truly having the chance to shine over this omniverse once more, as at this moment, he waited. The situation was happening very fast without others reacting just yet, with Noah's Invictus Dominium wings already twisting causality actively to cause whatever was occurring to rapidly towards the end result, as within Noah's existence, things happened even faster. Your blood is devouring and assimilating an unfathomable light, a light so pristine that to be controlled, a greater existential authority is required. The weavings of blood rise and burn with heavy existential brilliance. Woo! His existence circulated everything rapidly. His engine of cultivation continued to pump still, as his heart became even faster at the mere appearance of the white gold light within his blood. The ascendant existential extremity authority of blood has been brought forth with the complex brilliance of Lumen. The bright white gold singularity was broken down and absorbed as within his existence. A concept arose and only radiated more patently as a bloody sheen of white and gold began to surround Noah. From the extracted source blood of Lumen, a single existential hematopoietic lumen stem cell has been born. A single cell. But the moment it was produced within Noah's existence, boom! He contained a shocking explosive light within his body as his eyes radiated white gold arcs of light, everything inside him beginning to light up as if he were a light bulb. The lineage of the existential omniversal Lumen Emperor has come to fruition. Profound changes are beginning to bloom as a quintessential resonance occurred with your lineage and the weavings of Lumen. Your capabilities to store all extremes under the creed of your lineage resonated with the heaviest distinction of Lumen. You can now begin to undergo the process of the absolution of Lumen, allowing you to integrate the weavings of all of your extremes into Lumen. The entities of Lumen did not use existential extremity authorities or rely on omniversal authorities. They all put everything under the banner of their lineage, as this was what made it so bright. This was also the core truth utilized by the Imperium eons ago to cause their downfall. They were impenetrable and immeasurably powerful, but the moment the weavings of Lumen were jeopardized due to a betrayal, everything was lost. Were it not for this betrayal, Lumen would very likely be shining for countless eons. Noah knew what had occurred then and what was going on now. The path he followed would attain all the brilliance but none of the faults that had caused the downfall of those before him.
Hum!
As he thought this, globules of white gold blood began to be produced within his existence, his mana burning brightly as it acted like an endless source of energy to produce everything. And as more blood of Lumen continued to increase and flow within him, his forehead began to shine as the écriture of two dazzling white gold wings began to etch themselves like a tattoo. His pairs of Invictus Dominium wings that were already gold began to burn with a white gold brilliance. His figure began to emanate the profoundly stupendous light of none other than Lumen. And even as all of this occurred, the existential paracosm omniversal seed flashed and disappeared into his body. A dazzling quintessential codex of extremity also flashing its authority as its pages turned towards the last remaining records of Diorknis. Amidst the elevation of his lineage, the last remaining records of Diorknisi sense a vessel of their return. Words began to jump out of pages. Millions of weavings of existential extremity authorities sought to move together with complexity once more as at their core, a single paracosm omniversal seed owned by Noah waited. Chapter 31:15, The Existential Omniversal Lumen Emperor. 2. Multiple weavings unfolded all at once under the banner of the protagonist, an advancing lineage incorporating Lumen within it, an erased greater omniversal authority seeking to make its return through an existential paracosm omniversal seed. And then at this same time, to further tip the scales of causality to the favor of the protagonist, Deus Ex Machina will continue to be triggered as more scattered records of Lumen are gathered. The weavings of the ascendant existential extremity clone of the protagonist did not rest. For others, carrying out such drastic and insurmountably important actions had to be something they proceeded with carefully, slowly, and with utmost concentration. And yet Noah did multiple of such actions concurrently, as each one was done with seamless wonder. His heart beat loudly, his heart beat faster, his heart beat with more intensity. And by the time that enough concentration of the blood of Lumen coursed through him, boom! A blinding burst of white gold brilliance illuminated every part of Noah's existence, this light freezing all weavings of extremes in existence themselves, as apart from it, there seemed to be nothing else. And it only became blindingly greater, as after an indeterminate amount of time, Noah felt everything cease. The only thing that could be observed was a white gold brilliance, extending out across the horizon and all around him. Noah found himself appearing atop an endlessly vast white gold sea. The skies above tinged the same color as in this space. There didn't seem to be any flow of time. There seemed to only be Lumen. This is something I never expected. A voice echoed out calmly, but it was not Noah's. With dazzling eyes, Noah turned around as behind him, floating on top of the white gold sea, was a man who seemed well off in his later ages, with his fair skin glinting with brilliance as his hair shone white gold. His eyes seemed like pure singularities of light, as this being had a pair of wings sticking out on either side of his head. His immeasurably bright eyes met Noah as he spoke with a smile. None of my weavings had any expectations of this. I truly thought anything to do with Lumen was over, but here you are, taking the dredges left behind and bringing them to light. For that, I thank you. Whoa. The man was sitting on the surface of the white gold sea as Noah sat down in front of him, not even needing to guess the distinction of this entity before him as he nodded while replying. To have the Lumen Emperor from eons ago opposite me was also not something I would have guessed a few seconds ago. The Lumen Emperor, the one who led the existential omniversal lineage of Lumen all those eons ago. Thud handsome man smiled with immense sadness and regality at the mere mention of this distinction. He turned to stare at the vast white gold sea around them as he spoke with immense regret and sadness. I do not deserve such a title after allowing what happened to occur. Even this unfathomably small trace of myself appearing before you is but a glimmer of light, a reflection of a sliver of thought I had. It is just here to give thanks and to hope for a different future for Lumen from here on out. It was the voice of a man who carried far too heavy a burden of telling oneself over and over again how you could not protect the lineage you stood atop of, how you allowed countless quintillions to fall. Noah looked at this being who seemed to be scattering into particles of light already as his body began to buzz. I brought back the records of piety and other commanders of the battalions of Lumen. I can also bring back traces of your records and even fuse them into myself if I have to. His words were resounding ones as the Lumen Emperor smiled while shaking his head. The me here is only a reflection of light, a reflection of Lumen. That guy, he made sure that nothing about me would exist to ever be recovered. He was a paranoid and careful one. Be wary of him if he is still moving around now. Noah raised his brows at the words of the scattering Lumen Emperor, who nodded with care. The one who used to be my advisor, the one I trusted the most. The day he eradicated everything about me, he stated to me that he was no longer under my illuminating shadow, that he was the Imperium Autarch who would put this entire omniverse under his feet. The Imperium Autarch, the one who stood above martial kings, martial emperors, and the exarchs of the Imperium. The Imperium Autarch. Noah said the words out slowly as the scattering figure of light ahead of him smiled with sadness. A desperate man can do anything. My biggest mistake was not understanding the desperation of the one I relied on the most, and this was the cause of the eradication of my entire lineage. Knowing his hatred then, he will come for you now that you are reviving and elevating traces of what used to be. Exercise immense caution and never underestimate him. I'd rather not brag about how immeasurably powerful I was, and yet even I had my foot in the grave even before I knew he had attacked. Noah Osmont, I leave to you everything of Lumen and whatever else you can uncover. I thank you, and I wish you luck on your path. May it end with happiness and glory. With these words, the scattering figure of light entirely faded. The endless vast white gold sea and skies trembled as they began to converge on Noah's figure, being devoured by him entirely as all of this brilliance became contained within him entirely, and existence resumed once more. The advent of the existential omniversal Lumen Emperor has been fully realized. The weavings of the ascendant existential extremity clone of the protagonist still seek to tip causality to your favor. A quintessential existential deus ex machina has been triggered. The DLC of Lumen Omniverse expansion can now be enacted and maintained by the weavings of 3 omniversal organs. Chapter 3116, The Existential Omniversal Lumen Emperor. A third, the DLC of Lumen Omniverse expansion. The words were foreign and familiar to Noah at the same time as the concept of DLC was something he knew of from games he played on the Blue Planet, an addition of new content to an already existing game, to an already existing world. A new continent, a new character. More often than not, it was something unique that enriched what was already stunning, if one could pay the high price attached to it. His price was 3 omniversal organs, but what exactly did the weavings of the protagonist unearth from his memories and try to implement? Just what did the DLC of Lumen Omniverse expansion come with? This thought was followed by the white gold tattoo of wings on Noah's forehead, brightening up as waves of information instantly unfolded. The establishment of the Lumen Omniverse expansion will allow for a pseudo-omniverse to be layered onto the current omniverse around you. Under the light of the Lumen Omniverse expansion, all those under the banner of Lumen initially gain absolute omniversal resistances. 75% absolute omniversal resistance to all existential extremity authorities, plus 75% absolute omniversal resistance to the influence of lesser omniversal authorities. 50% absolute omniversal resistance to the influence of greater omniversal authorities, 1% absolute omniversal resistance to all existence-based attacks. Words that caused Noah's eyes to buzz unfolded. Absolute omniversal resistances, something that could cause terrifying existential extremity authorities to only ever be capable of applying 25% of their power across, or even the reduction of the influence of omniversal authorities. And these were just the initial themes. After the Lumen Omniverse expansion stabilizes, Sentinels of Lumen at the Omnivo 8 existential realm of Lumen will begin to be generated. The Sentinels of Lumen are filled with animosity towards all things that come in close proximity, and they will further seek out any life forms that do not have even a trace of Lumen within them. Decimation of the Omnivo 8 Sentinels of Lumen will yield nothing but existential omniversal map fragments that come together to form an omniversal intersect portal leading to an eonic omniverse record. An eonic omniverse record can buy any random record within this omniverse that greatly alters the course of extremes in existence, and different rules of existence will be applied to each eonic omniverse record, as inside one, the protagonist could obtain tools that can tremendously aid in twisting causality to their favor. Millenniums or an eon could pass within an eonic omniverse record, and only an instant may have passed outside of it as the weavings of space-time are distorted. The DLC of Lumen Omniverse expansion was a unique one. Apart from a domain-like capability that greatly benefited those from the lineage of Lumen, there was something as shocking as the appearance of multiple Omnivo 8 Sentinels of Lumen that attacked any existence they came across, whether it was Noah and his people or their enemies. But the possibilities if any of these Sentinels were taken down were so astounding that right away, can an omniversal engine be substituted for an omniversal organ in the initiation of the Lumen Omniverse expansion? Noah asked himself in the weavings of the ascendant existential extremity clone of the protagonist. He had the Invictus Dominium wings and Fidelis Dominium heart, and after the dual cultivation with Sona, a third omniversal organ was on its way, but it was not yet matured. His weavings even told him a new omniversal organ was coming sooner than he even expected. But at this moment, he was short on time. So he asked himself and gave himself an answer right after. Temporarily. He could use the equation of 2 omniversal organs and an omniversal engine temporarily, as the moment he had this affirmation, he began to put it into play. But, young friend, did you think we'd give you time to glow and finish doing whatever it is you're doing? The reason why he didn't have time. An eerily calm voice rang out from above, as the Elder Queen Mothers only looked up to see a conflagration of pure golden lightning. It was an exarch of the Imperium appearing above, his body spilling out a heavy presence of a particularly powerful paracosm, as this wasn't a doppelganger. The moment he arrived, bundles of destructive circular arcs of lightning cascaded down by the trillions, the omniverse itself being shredded as these tendrils of lightning only idealized destruction. And this paracosm was too hard to deny, as the massive tree of life enacted by the Elder Queen Mother of Life was instantly shredded, the bellows of the Queen Mothers erupting out as they moved. Piety did not shoot up to join them in this defense, this entity actually facing down and thrusting his spear out as their a woman with white hair and gold eyes adorned in a golden armament could be seen. Exarch Chevron. Her fair hand shockingly stopped the tip of Piety's spear within it, as from there, the bombardment of the heavy influence of at least 10 greater omniversal authorities bloomed from her hand. The influence of 10 greater omniversal authorities. Crack! Causality was distorted, as among the 10 omniversal authorities, even Aitia could be felt. The body of Exarch Chevron seemed to already be swimming with the brilliance of the component of efficiency, and likely other components of Atia, as this was only a single boon she was receiving from this one greater omniversal authority. What about the other omniversal authorities supporting her? How tremendous were their boons to her power? Such an answer could only be experienced as the moment she clenched her hand, the massive spear that Piety had been utilizing this whole time shattered. This entity played no games as an instant later. She moved her body as if she were a strung bow, her head whipping back before it threw itself forward at a tremendous velocity. The white hair on her head instantly turning into a blinding white arrow of light that headed straight towards Noah. It constantly advanced across space as causality was actively distorted, with a single result of the death of the Master of Lumen ahead seeking to be guaranteed. Chapter 31:17, The Existential Omniversal Lumen Emperor, Evil. Oh! The white gold brilliance of Lumen unfolded as Piety appeared before this unstoppable white brilliance of an Exarch, Nagarius and Fenrir appearing behind it, while Tiamatherion roared out to the sides, moving to protect Noah from multiple other angles where the heavy auras of other Exarchs of the Imperium were blooming. It was a perilous moment. A moment that showed in terms of pure power, these terrifying entities had their paracosms too purely refined, too far advanced. And such a result only showed itself fully, as the massive, unbreakable body of Piety was pierced straight through the chest, his massive hands holding the arrow like locks of hair as behind him, the massive jaws of Fenrir bit down. Lastly, Nagarius wrapped its serpentine body around this terrifying arrow, pulsing with the influence of too many omniversal authorities, its sharp point coming to be inches away from Noah's face as he spoke out coldly. Lumen Omniverse expansion. Like a buzzing engine. His Invictus Dominium wings pulse, his Veritas Dominium heart beat loudly, and quite a distance away, the infinite existential omniversal seed hung, with Noah at the center, utter brilliance unfolding. To all others, it was only a mere flash of light, but the flash of light came with too many changes as the omniverse itself and the surroundings distorted and faded away. Within the gaps, it could still be seen and felt, but something else had layered itself on top entirely. Under the brilliance of two omniversal organs and one omniversal engine, the Lumen Omniverse expansion is blooming across the light years near the ascendant existential extremity clone of the protagonist. This prompt flashed instantly before Noah's eyes before everything changed. Across this area, countless white pillars of stellar stone-like material arose, formed into archways. The base of the stellar white pillars was connected by golden halls of cobblestone that flowed intricately, with one design of pillars and archways coming together and converging at the center to form a massive circle of white gold light that burned with white gold flames. Intricate halls, pillars, archways, and their convergence into central areas, holding a blazing circle of white gold flames formed all around, while Noah adapted to this new reality. You and those you have designated as allies have gained the continuing absolute omniversal resistances. You have gained plus 75% absolute omniversal resistance to all existential extremity authorities. You have gained plus 75% absolute omniversal resistance to the influence of lesser omniversal authorities. You have gained plus 50% absolute omniversal resistance to the influence of greater omniversal authorities. You have gained 1% absolute omniversal resistance to all existence-based attacks. Around Noah, around Sona, around the ascendant existential sun, around the Sanctus Populi, 4 circles of white gold light appeared around each of their bodies, rotating around them with glorious brilliance. The moment they appeared, boom! Piety swung his arms across his pierced chest as the massive white arrow was shattered. Fenrir clamped down on the rest, while Nagarius twisted its body, the countless locks of hair losing their immense hardness and being shattered right before Noah's eyes. The gaze of Exarch Chevron became chilly as she felt the unknown changes. She stared above at the healing figure of Piety, whose chest was closing up, and past him towards the visage of Noah, who had inexplicably done something drastic. Around her, flashes of light manifested as other Exarchs appeared, all of them staring with deadly brilliance toward Noah, even as their bodies were gathering their authority to continue attacking. Noah stared at all of them calmly as his voice rang out. I welcome you all and any others who may come to entirely new lands of Lumen. It was as if they were no longer in the same omniverse they knew. Stretching out for light years all around them, only white gold structures could be seen, as if the grand halls, archways, and pillars of the existential omniversal lineage of Lumen had reappeared once more. And at this time, the current Lumen omniverse has reached a required stage of stability. The sentinels of Lumen will now begin to appear. They didn't differentiate between friend or foe. Their downfall paved the way for unique root as their power was on the equivalent stage of tyrant. In the central areas between the pillars and golden halls where white gold flames were burning, they rose and flared out to form massive figures of humanoid entities born of flames, their hands holding a myriad of weapons in the forms of flaming swords, lances, axes, and even shields. Their eyes blazed with singularities of flames, while on their backs, 3 pairs of brilliant wings of light shone. They burned with the pristine light of Lumen. Near Noah and the Sanctus Populi, there was a convergence of the golden halls, where one massive sentinel was born, and Noah voiced out to the elder Queen Mother and her legions that were near there. Move back. The sentinels of Lumen attacked everyone in close proximity, but they held even grander animosity towards those who didn't have the light of Lumen on them. The massive sentinel nearby turned its flaming head and eyes coldly towards the legions of Sanctus Populi, as moments later, its head turned towards the glaring auras of exarchs in the far distance. It wasn't the only one, as other sentinels acted the same, honing in on any Imperium legions near them as Boom! A single sentinel acted first, with a scorching beam of pure flaming light shooting from its eyes, its wings flapping as it shot straight towards Exarch Chevron and others whose authorities flared with maddening fervor. An instant later, other sentinels of Lumen followed with long-distance beams of light from their eyes before they shot out towards the most powerful forces of the Imperium, some heading further up towards the omniversal pillagers. The battle had entered a new phase. The Lumen Omniverse expansion was laid down as the whole landscape changed. Chapter 3118, The Existential Omniversal Lumen Emperor, 5, as beams of frightening white gold brilliance shot towards them. Exarch Chevron and the other Imperium exarchs were grouped together as her voice echoed out coldly. This is what Lumen is. Its brilliance taints everything as if it isn't stopped. It will very quickly bask over the Omniverse, so don't hold back and go all out. As she spoke, her hands floated upwards while releasing a golden coin. A coin that spun above her head before it enlarged to form a massive rift stretching upwards, a sickle-like limb instantly stretching out from it as the form of an utterly titanic Decastas of extremity came out, shining brilliantly all in white with a central eye on the head. There was actually a face sticking out of the chest of this Decastas as it looked blank and lifeless at this moment, but the face had an écriture of an S etched across its forehead. It was a face reminiscent to that of a Queen Mother of the Sanctus Populi. The Decastas came out with a roar as a light of heavy paracosm surrounded it, with it not being the only one as the rift above the exarchs remained open white, one paracosm Decastas after another began to flow out. Boom! The attacks of the Sentinels of Lumen arrived at this time as an ecstatic battle truly began. What is this? In the distance, Noah held pulsing golden blades of dignity as she spoke towards Noah. Think of it as a pseudo-omniverse, where your enemies have the effectiveness of existential extremity authorities, and omniversal authorities greatly dwindled. Occasionally, Sentinels of Lumen will spawn in those areas as they attack everything nearby, but especially so if one doesn't have even a shred of Lumen within them. Consider them as a form of challenge to take down. Noah spoke such words calmly as the elder Queen Mothers around him gazed towards him with questionable scrutiny. Those so-called sentinels each emanate a pressure of a paracosm stage existential dominium realm. Yes, Noah's answer was a calm one, as if it was only natural, with a lot of his attention being inside of his existence, where the existential paracosm omniversal seed was currently burning with the obsidian light of a reviving Diorkness. To the protagonist, what was happening was the most natural thing in the world, as causality was distorted to achieve his aims. To others, it made his figure immeasurably filled with mystery, as they didn't understand him even further. This was especially so for the Queen Mother of Dignity, who had seen him within the source of dignity not too long ago. She looked towards Sona as if she was seeking more information, only for this girl to roll her eyes and shake her head as the Queen Mother of Dignity sighed, taking this time that the Imperium legions were preoccupied to approach Noah. Her hands unfolded to reveal a verdant gold pearl filled with singularities, a pearl that she offered to Noah while voicing out. The Sanctus Empress does wish to communicate with you, as mentioned, a dazzling pearl of light. Noah accepted it, while his will oversaw the workings of too many processes around him, a part of his will sinking into it as it began to traverse across a unique source. It wasn't dignity or life or honor or anything similar, but it held a warm glow that made one reflect on themselves naturally. A glow of humanity and wisdom that seemed to question and accept. A part of Noah's will followed the weavings of such a glow, while he still monitored the ongoing weavings of the current battle, his gaze also on the distant existential devouring Turtur, who was raging madly while facing 3 sentinels of Lumen. Gradually, the part of his traversing will arrive towards a certain location, where Noah felt the complex weavings of an extremely powerful consciousness residing. The space twisted and distorted, as similar to when he just met the Lumen Emperor from eons past. He found himself in what looked to be a constructed space of a consciousness. Verdant gold grass flowed serenely below his feet as a tree shining with brilliance stretched out towards the endless expanse of space. It felt peaceful, as if such was a place of utmost serenity and wonder. At the base of the endlessly rising tree was a humanoid figure, blazing with calm brilliance, the face full of serenity and beauty gazing towards him with a sense of seriousness. As Noah identified this source he was in right away. Populi. A version of the source of Populi itself, as this entity in front of him was the amalgamation of the will of the Sanctus Empress herself. Noah couldn't sense genuine traces of power from her, as it didn't show how far above the paracosmic stage she was. I realize the time may not be opportune, but as someone who has appeared from nowhere to now, to be able to affect the flow of weavings of the Populi and the extended Omniverse, I figured I should at least know who you are and what you wish to do. Her voice was extremely magnetic, as Noah's will steered itself while replying calmly. At this point, it is more than sufficient to know me as the existential omniversal Lumen Emperor. What I wish for, peace for all the people. Noah smiled as he spoke the last words, thinking of his extremes and his own motivation that changed over the months. And if he really said all he sought was peace, then the mountains of entities he had killed behind him, and those that were about to fall in the future, would break apart in anger. But his words only caused the manifestation of the Sanctus Empress to look at him closely before nodding. The existential omniversal Lumen Emperor, how much will the Imperium pay for what happened all those eons ago? Can we expect you to contribute to the cessation of weavings coming for the masses? The cessation of weavings coming for the masses. This was an extremely unique choice of words, as Noah's eyes squinted as he affirmed. Just like him, this being's paths were not all closed, as she still had multiple variable paths of life. She smiled as if she could see his thoughts, with Noah's voice echoing out soon after. Generations have passed as those involved in the eradication of Lumen eons ago will answer to what they've done. As for those not even involved, I have no qualms with them. He wasn't a senseless killer who would erase every single citizen of the Imperium and carry out a senseless genocide. But he felt the hatred of Lumen and could see who among the Imperium forces were there all those eons ago. And as if his answer was more than sufficient, the Sanctus Empress nodded while leaning down to stroke the verdant gold grass around them. Very well. Then our thoughts converge for the betterment of the people. You have my support, as well as my knowledge on just what is causing the cessation of weavings within this omniverse. She spoke succinctly as if she knew. The identity of the devouring worms that others couldn't even see unless it was with their own eyes. Chapter 31:19, The Existential Omniversal Lumen Emperor. V6. The manifestation of the Sanctus Empress was speedy, as she didn't waste any time after her words, her fair hands waving as the verdant gold robes she wore flickered slightly to magnify some of her blessed curves. With a wave of her hands, a green-bordered screen appeared and enlarged before Noah's eyes, the voice of the Sanctus Empress accompanying its appearance. They are entirely antithetical to existential extremity authority, with any utilized means through such authority or omniversal authorities yielding nothing against them, nor doing anything against them. As she spoke, the verdant bordered screen showed an astounding reality. It was a floating golden fortress surrounded by weavings of a silver greater omniversal authority that masked it from being seen by others, with a dense number of the forces of Sanctus Populi moving around and within this castle. An outpost of ours, or what used to be an outpost. Moments later, this occurred. Noah's eyes became sharp. When he tried to peer through the weavings of the devouring worms, all he saw was their invisible movements as they attacked anything they came across, with all entities only realizing something was wrong when the threat was right before them. But this time, he saw them. Obsidian worm-like segmented bodies, spiked sharp limbs on the base of their bodies, and brilliant obsidian aurora of wings behind their backs. I have a unique capability not linked to existential extremity authorities or omniversal authorities, where I am capable of deploying my eyes to be stationed countless light years apart without being detected. It's how I oversee and manage all the bases of Sanctus Populi and get them ready in the case of attacks. That was how I was able to capture this scene. The scene showed the devouring worms appearing silently and entirely surrounding the fortress. They were as fast as the strongest Terracosm stage entities, as by the time the Dragon Knights noticed them. Squelch! They were as fast as the strongest Terracosm stage entities, as by the time the Dragon Knights noticed them. Squelch! Their bodies were already pierced, as their existence was erased, as if it never existed moments later. Only visible to the naked eye. They invaded the fortress and carried out a silent massacre on all the forces of Sanctus they came across, no matter if they were at the Teleos or the Terracosm stage. Their bodies entirely reject existential extremity authorities and omniversal authorities as if they have absolutely no effectiveness, and yet against us. The scene continued to play out. Within the fortress, only a Paracosm stage Elder Queen and her Dragon Knights were left, as they were swarmed by devouring worms all around, each one being cut down as if their power meant nothing, when all of a sudden, boom, from their clustered figures. The visage of a dazzling woman encased in a prominent colorless aura appeared, not gold, not multicolored, colorless. With her unfathomable beauty, great rage was seen within her face as she was none other than the Sanctus Empress. Noah turned towards her manifestation in this space with a sense of shock as her words continued, just as calmly. I couldn't just stand by after my eyes captured this reality. I couldn't let them all die. So I arrived there as quickly as I could. It was an extremely stupid decision. The moment she appeared, her hair and eyes blazed with colorless flames and tendrils of light that shot out in all directions, the devouring worms initially pushed back by the shocking power they held. But moments later, their bodies seemingly acclimated to it. Openings bloomed across their worm-like bodies as they began to devour this colorless aura as if it were nothing. They began to swarm towards the Sanctus Empress and the remaining forces of the Sanctus Populi once more. With a flicker of her hands, the Sanctus Empress caused others to disappear as she was left alone, her entire existence blazing with brilliance to keep the devouring worms at bay, as she also disappeared an instant later. Her face was drained of all color as before she got the chance to breathe. She felt a scythe of death swing behind her as she dodged, turning around to see the swarm of devouring worms somehow following the weavings of space-time she used to teleport away, as if they had tagged her. As she held a tag they could always find. At whatever point she warped across the Omniverse, they followed her. And whatever attacks she threw towards them, they simply devoured it as they seemed even more emboldened, as if everything strand of authority they devoured only made them more powerful. I have been running this whole time, across the Omniverse, but with every passing second, more and more of them swarm towards me. Very soon, my Dominium soul will dry up. After that, her voice now sounded weak She trailed off with a smile. But these are the enemies responsible for the cessation. Across the eons of records, I've heard something about such enemies within the whispers of Lumen. So I ask you, O existential omniversal Lumen Emperor, do you know exactly what these enemies are? Can you confirm our doom? Or is there actually a chance they are not what I believe they are? Did Noah know? Traces of the answer appeared in the records of Lumen he had devoured from the intersect where the collective consciousness used to be. His eyes carried immeasurable heaviness as he sighed while looking straight at the manifestation of the Sanctus Empress. They are exactly what you believe they are. They do not stem from our existential omniverse, as the likely reason they have appeared now is that they finally managed to track down a target of theirs that had run away for eons. The words caused the eyes of the Sanctus Empress to tremble. They arrived here because they were chasing after a target. If they were not from this existential omniverse, then didn't that mean what they were chasing was under the same boat? Yes. Noah nodded deeply as he continued to affirm the records he was digging up from the weavings of Lumen. The Lumen Emperor of eons ago did not stem from the same type of existence as us. The Way! Chapter 3120, Black and White One. The entirely different system of power portrayed by the weavings of their entities. The fact that they somehow took everything under the banner of Lumen and nothing else. It was not the flow of power those in this omniverse followed. The Imperium Autarch found out about this from the Lumen Emperor, about an enemy he could not run away from that would eventually find him. So to rectify this, the Imperium Autarch carried out a cleansing to wipe out Lumen entirely and make sure not even a trace of it survived, to ensure the safety of this omniverse. But ultimately, he seems to have failed. Yes, these were the records Noah was actively unveiling as his lineage coursed with greater and greater volumes of Lumen. The knowledge that the remaining shreds of the Lumen Emperor did not share with him. The shame this entity wanted to bury. The Sanctus Empress listened to Noah's words as her eyes trembled further, disbelief apparent within them as she thought about her war with the Imperium. All this. A complex mixture of emotions buzzed in her mind. Noah looked at her calmly as he continued. Even such a truth doesn't make the complete genocide carried out by the Imperium okay. It was a solution, one of the worst ones, but not the only solution. Then, his words caused the figure of the Sanctus Empress, whose main body was being chased by devouring worms at this very moment, to appear directly in front of him. Do you have a solution? Did Noah have a solution? Looking at the eyes filled with light and hope, he didn't lie as he shrugged his shoulders. Maybe. I'm not too sure yet, as I am discovering all of this in real time. The Lumen Emperor, the Imperium Autarch, why the Imperium was so afraid of Lumen resurfacing. This fear was ingrained in them from records of history and caution from the Imperium Autarch. But it was all for naught. Even before Noah began to unearth the weavings of Lumen, the devouring worms had appeared. Whether it was due to the actions of the remnant collective consciousness, or the terrifying capabilities of these devouring worms, or by another stroke of weavings entirely. They had located this place and arrived, and now the terror the Lumen Emperor was afraid of ran rampant. All of this was cause for introspection, as it showed not everything was black and white. There was never just good and evil. At the end of the day, all things were made up by a series of choices. The Lumen Emperor made a choice, the Imperium Autarch made a choice, the Sanctus Populi made a choice, and now Noah would also make a choice. His gaze was firm as he looked at the manifestation of the Sanctus Empress. You are being chased by these devouring worms this whole time with no direction. How about you give them a direction? The buzzing eyes of the Sanctus Empress steeled and calm. After all, she was an entity that had somehow managed to take her community past terrifying. To have her existence shine with a colorless brilliance. What had happened in the past and what was happening now were all reconciled as her eyes became filled with determination as she asked, "What direction?" These things will devour everything they touch, as no authorities are effective against them. Her words showed a grim coming future. If all they had were existential extremity authorities and omniversal authorities, and none of them were effective against their enemies, only a bloodbath would come. Noah knew this very well as his voice echoed out calmly. The source began with Lumen. The solution may lie there as well. Come towards the location of the current battlefield. Let me experience these devouring worms firsthand. Noah calculated many things and came to a decision. The Sanctus Empress stared at him after such crazy words as her voice came out calmly. My people are there with you. Without a solution, you would delegate them to certain death. Her biggest worry and purpose, the people, her people. Yet towards such a worry, Noah spoke with immeasurable conviction. Not a single dragon knight or sanctus princess or elder queen will be lost under my watch. You have my promise. A promise. But what was a promise from someone like Noah to someone like the Sanctus Empress when both sides had just met each other? The weavings of the populace shone with brilliance around them as a moment passed. And then, very well, the deadly agreement from the Sanctus Empress came. Boom! 3 Imperium exarchs worked hand in hand as they released waves of power at the Paracosm stage, the weavings of a sentinel of Lumen being shredded apart within moments. An engulfing explosion of light bloomed from such an action as at the center of this explosion, a twinkling white-gold singularity flashed and disappeared. And before Noah's eyes, the first sentinel of Lumen has been laid to rest. As the initiator of the DLC of Lumen Omniverse expansion, you automatically gain the only possible randomized loot dropped from the Sentinels of Lumen. You have gained one of 3 parts of the Var-El Existential Omniversal Map fragment. Collecting all 3 parts of the Var-El Existential Omniversal Map fragment will grant you the capability to open up the Var-El Omniversal Intersect portal and into this Ionic Omniverse record. Clear this Ionic Omniverse record to obtain unknown weavings that will allow the protagonist to tip the scale